Well, we continue this week here on GCR to remember the life and legacy of our good friend and the voice of Navy athletics, Mr. Pete Medhurst. And joining us this morning here on the program, he is the athletic director at the Naval Academy. He is Chet Gladchuk, and he's with us now here on GCR. Chet, it's Glenn in Baltimore. I wish this wasn't the reason why we were chatting, but I appreciate you
Sure.
taking the time this morning to chat with us.
It is my pleasure, Glenn.
Chet, we use terms like, and I'll make a comparison. I'm the voice of Loyola, right? But I do the games. That's what I do.
hmm
Pete was like spiritually the voice of the Naval Academy. I mean,
Yeah.
it was you associated him with that place almost as much as you associated any individual with that place. Can you share a little bit from your perspective about what Pete meant, not just to football, not just to basketball, but to the entirety of the Naval Academy?
Well, Pete was very much involved with us even before we became, our lead man. With Navy athletics, we had Bob Sosi, who had been the
Yeah.
voice for many, many years, and Bob left and went to the Patriots, and Peter worked with Bob, the two of them, and so you take a person like Bob Sosi, as I would put him in the category of a mentor, an inspirational mentor to Pete, and Pete just kept getting better and better and better, and he had that wonderful voice that projected so well, and the professionalism. And when Sosi left, Medhurst was the obvious. I mean, and my senior associate Eric Rudin, who over really sees our broadcasting, television, all that, came to me and said, "Chet, what do you think about Pete?" And I said, "I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Pete's the guy." And then he started running with the ball. He had a kind of a limited role in the early going, but as the momentum picked up, he just kept getting more involved with different sports and podcasts, and he did our television, he did our radio. And that voice just became synonymous, over the last, 15 years of Navy athletics. When you heard that voice, or, checkerboard end zone, or the way he'd project every time we'd score a touchdown, his enthusiasm, it just resonated with an energy, that we were just so grateful because it was Navy athletics. And, Pete was clearly, the voice of what we represent. Intelligent, articulate, incredibly thoughtful, never for a loss at words. I don't know how many interviews I did with Pete over the years where, we never got, stuck, so to speak, on any moment over any topic. If there was a pause, he just had this grasp of of what's going on, and he'd just step right in and just lead the conversation in a way that it was always always enlightening, and it was always a positive experience for me and for anyone else he was with. A friend,
Yeah.
an
Mm-hmm.
associate, a family member, a brother, a cousin, you name it. Pete was all of the above, and he embodied, everything we could hope for in an individual that carried our message into the community and beyond.
What you just said, the quality of human being that Pete Medhurst was, and I know it quite well as he was a close friend of mine and someone who
Yeah,
always looked out for me in this business. But obviously it matters most what you are as a professional, but how much more significant was it for you, for the academy, for the athletics department, that Pete was such an incredible human being, and it was so easy for people who cared about Navy athletics to
yeah,
gravitate towards him because of that.
yeah. Well, I think that with all due respect, Glenn, to you and many media, we get called all the time, and there are questions, and there's interest in various topics, and I think that it's just only human nature whether it be an athletic director anywhere or a coach anywhere, there's, guarded a little bit in comments
Mm-hmm.
and careful a little bit about what you say and everything else. But that was never the case with Pete. Pete was, I mentioned a moment ago, Pete was just pure family. The level of trust with Pete was such that no matter what you would say or no matter how you'd present it, if Pete felt as though that he needed to follow up with something to clarify it or to make certain it was in the right context, he just had this incredible, insightful way of making you feel comfortable, and making you feel as though you were talking again, to your brother at the kitchen table. And, he was responsible in the way he conducted his business. He was sensitive because it wasn't about just an interview where he was gathering information. Pete Medhurst was Navy athletics. He actually exuded, what we were all about. And no matter what the topic was, Pete would always just convey it in a way that was clear, effective, and he brought a level of comfort. And then that really, again, is what I said a minute ago about trust. You could just trust him because he was one of us. I actually often thought about, he ought to be, on the staff. He ought to be one of our people. He ought to be upstairs working with Scott Strassmeyer, really the voice of Navy athletics from the inside. But it was always more, creditable that he was on the outside, where if he had something to say, that was an opinion that made sense, but it was just due, he'd say it. He had that liberty, and I think that gave him also the credibility with
Sure.
our fans that Pete's going to tell it like it is, but I'm repeating, we always knew from the inside out that he was a Navy man, and he would present it in a way that was beneficial, informative, but complimentary to the academy.
Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Chet, the passion that he had for Navy and how much he loved being, he would say constantly, not just publicly, he would say it in private conversation, I feel like I have the best job in America. How much did that mean, and how much do you feel like that transcended, that you knew how much he loved and how grateful he was for having that role and having that job?
He was us. That's the best way to put it. Again, I mentioned, you get news reporters or you get interview people that'll call you from the outside in. You talk to them once every 6 months or once in a while, and they're always coming from the outside in terms of their agenda or their questions. Peter was Navy athletics. Peter was the United States Naval Academy. Peter was ingrained in the fiber, of who we are. He's just an incredible human being that lived it, loved it, thought about it all the time. You could always count on him. He never missed an assignment. He came with great enthusiasm to every broadcast that he put forward, and we had him on so many telecasts where he was the face and not only the voice of Navy athletics. He teamed up, with some tremendous people in the industry, and he did more so than even Navy athletics, which brought even a higher level of professionalism in the way he presented himself and his insights. I tell you, Glenn, we were just flat out fortunate. We've had an era of Pete Medhurst that has been as good as it gets. And we've got, the next line is coming in. And we got some good people that are going to pick up the reins. But, in fairness, as much as we, are pleased with, those that come after Peter, no one will ever, fill his shoes. No one will ever project. No one will ever convey, as effectively as Peter did because of the passion he had, for the midshipmen, the coaches, and again the academy.
I couldn't imagine saying that any more strongly, Chet. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And I wonder too if it like little things like how much he would go onto other platforms and
Yeah.
speak so glowingly about the can you quantify what that meant? Like, what did it mean for the coaches there that like they had that relationship? And in all the other athletes at the academy, can you quantify what it meant to everyone there?
Well, I think it goes beyond, just Navy athletics trying to create visibility, in the public sector. We work on that every single day. I got a staff upstairs that's trying to make connections with you guys and, television and newspapers, and they're always working on ways to get exposure. Peter was like the liaison to credibility. If Pete Medhurst was going to speak about Navy athletics, it brought a higher level of credibility, interest. We got a lot more yeses, by everyone out there in the media land. When Pete was carrying the message, because of Pete, the way he'd present, the intelligence, the insight, the interest that he brought to a subject. It wasn't just a matter of fact presentation. Again, it was a passion that came with Pete's presentation that made it entertaining in itself. More so than even just the facts. He was a catalyst for interest and a credibility that came with Navy athletics that bought us, exposure and brought us, much broader awareness of who we are because of who he was, Pete Medhurst. I don't know. He not only did he do the games, and again he did the interviews and the podcasts, etc. But he also did an awful lot with some of the major stations,
Yep.
Around the community, kind of on the side, representing Navy athletics that never would have happened, if it wasn't for Pete Medhurst.
Oh man.
In his, his presence, and Pete because he was Pete. So there's a dimension, as you point out, quantitatively that we're going to miss, because he opened doors that don't normally open because of who he was, and just everyone knew that if Peter was carrying the message, it was worth listening to.
I couldn't imagine saying it better. Chet, we are still reeling, and the thought of him not being here is awful. But I'm glad he got to go out with a lot of fun calling football again this season, right?
He loved it.
Man,
he loved football. He never missed.
No.
He never missed a game. He was, right there with us on the team playing. He, I don't know. Now you got me a little emotional.
I understand.
When I think about him. And
I understand, Chet.
the travel and the relationship, but we're going to miss him. But we'll never forget him, and we're going to do. We'll create some tributes to Pete that will, his legacy will live on forever within the annals of Navy athletics. I'll make sure that happens.
Chet, we'll make sure that next time we talk, we're talking about the wonderful things that are going on at the Naval Academy. We appreciate you spending the time with us this morning to reflect on Pete Medhurst. Thank you so much, Chet.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.